Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere you probably haven't visited before. East Africa, about 2.4 million years ago. The air here is sharp with the scent of wet grass after a morning rain, and the sun is still low enough to cast long, sleepy shadows across the savanna. You're standing on a rise that overlooks a patchwork of gold and green. A herd of antelope grazes in the distance. Somewhere far off, a lion coughs, low and lazy. But it's a sound that reminds you you're not exactly in a safe neighborhood. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me your location and the local time where you're watching from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ground crunches under your bare, calloused feet. The soil is warm already, even though the day's barely begun. You squint against the sun's glare as you follow a faint game trail down toward a shallow river. It's not just thirst that's drawing you there. It's the sound. The water chuckles over stone in a way that's oddly soothing, like it's telling you a joke you're too slow to get. You aren't human as we think of it now. Not yet. Your skull's a little smaller, your brow a little heavier, your arms a little longer. But your hands, those are changing. They're different from the ape-like grip of your ancestors. You can curl your fingers around objects, hold them steady, rotate them with a delicate twist of the wrist. You don't know it, but this is your secret weapon. The savanna is both a supermarket and a minefield. Food is everywhere if you know how to get it. Danger is everywhere if you make the wrong move. The main menu? Roots, berries, nuts, the occasional bird egg if you can beat a snake to it. Meat is rarer, harder to come by, unless you're willing to chase down something faster than you. Spoiler, you're not. Or steal scraps from the leftovers of something bigger, toothier, and much less polite. You crouch by the riverbank, watching water ripple over pebbles and cobbles. Most are smooth, worn round by ages of flow, but a few are different, angular, harder. One of them catches your eye because it's sitting at a strange angle, half buried in silt. It has an edge, not sharp enough to cut you badly, but sharp enough that when you run your thumb along it, it leaves a faint line in your skin. You turn it over, fascinated. This is not food. It's not shelter. It's something else. Mainstream fact. Archaeologists now call you Homo habilis, handyman, the first hominin we know of to systematically make and use stone tools. You don't know the label, of course, but you're living the reality, somewhere between the steady work of your ancestors and the explosive ingenuity of your descendants. You've landed in this quiet revolution, using your hands not just to grab, but to create. You carry the stone back to a patch of shade under an acacia tree. There, another of your kind squats, pulling fibrous roots from the ground. You watch them struggle, teeth gnashing, hands fumbling. Then, as if the idea drops fully formed into your mind, you strike the stone against another rock nearby. There's a sharp tock. A flake splinters off. light as a leaf, landing in the dust. It's the sound more than the result that hooks you. Something about that crisp snap sends a shiver of possibility up your spine. You pick up the flake. Its edge glints in the sunlight, finer than anything you've felt before. You drag it across a root, and fibers part with surprising ease. Quirky tidbit. Some paleoanthropologists think the first stone tools might have been accidents, the byproduct of cracking nuts or breaking open bones. Imagine stumbling onto history's first Swiss Army knife while just trying to get at a particularly stubborn peanut. You look up, and your companion is watching. They reach for the flake, turning it over with curiosity. You trade a glance, a flicker of recognition that this might be worth remembering. Around you, the savanna hums. Weaver birds chatter overhead. A breeze stirs the dust, but your mind is not on the sound of the wind or the feel of the shade. It's on the shape of that edge, the angle of the flake, the fact that you made it happen. You might not think in words, but in sensations and patterns. Still, the idea is there. I can do this again. Historians still argue whether Homo habilis understood the concept of making tools before they actually did it, or whether the knowledge came entirely from accident and repetition. What's clear is that once you start, you don't stop. As the day wanes, you carry the stone back to your shelter, a hollow beneath a fallen tree trunk, where a handful of others huddle against the night. You set it down carefully beside you, not with the thought of ownership, that's a future invention, but with the instinct that this somehow belongs close. It's more than just a rock now. It's a memory of what you did and a promise of what you can do. Above, the first stars prick through the fading light. Somewhere nearby, hyenas cackle. But you sit in the dark, your fingers curling around the stone, feeling its weight. And for the first time, you have something sharper than your teeth. The morning sun climbs higher, warming your back as you walk. The grass shimmers in the light, beads of dew evaporating in the soft steam that smells faintly sweet, like a cross between fresh hay and warm rain. Every step crunches over grit and seeds, the occasional dry twig snapping underfoot. Somewhere to your right, a distant splash signals a crocodile slipping into the water. You glance that way without stopping. Some sounds aren't worth investigating. Your goal today is simple. Find more stones. Not just any stones, good ones. That sharp-edged flake you chipped yesterday is still on your mind. You'd left it hidden under a pile of dry leaves near your shelter, a secret stash. But one flake isn't enough. You want more. You follow the river upstream, where the banks flatten and the water slows into a glassy curve. Here, the sun hits the shallows, and the stones beneath seem to glow. They're smoothed by centuries of tumbling and current, their colors muted, slate gray, dusky brown, the occasional surprise of orange or red, where iron has stained the surface. You crouch and start to search. Your fingers trail over wet pebbles, slick with algae, each one cool against your skin. Most are too round, too blunt. But then you find one, volcanic in origin, perhaps basalt. You don't know the word, but you feel the difference. It's heavier for its size, the texture rougher, almost sandy. That grain means it will fracture more predictably, produce sharper edges. Mainstream fact? Archaeologists know that early toolmakers like you preferred fine-grained volcanic rock, basalt, rhyolite, and especially flint, because the way they break creates razor-sharp flakes. It wasn't just luck. It was selective collecting, whether instinctive or learned. A little further upstream, you notice a cluster of dark, angular stones at the base of a crumbling cliff. You pause to listen. The air is still, except for the low hiss of water. You step closer. Some of these stones are already fractured, likely from falling and hitting each other. Their edges catch the light in a way that makes you think of yesterday's flake. You pick one up and give it a tentative strike against another in your left hand. A flake skitters off into the grass. You grin, though not the way we do today, with conscious awareness. More a flash of tooth and a brightening of the eyes. This works. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers believe that the first stone collectors might have been drawn to shiny or unusually shaped rocks, even before understanding their utility, kind of like a magpie with an art collection it doesn't use. Maybe that odd pull you feel toward certain pebbles is more than just function. You gather a few of the best candidates and cradle them in the crook of your arm. The walk back to camp is slower now, not just because of the weight, but because you keep stopping to scan the ground. Every glint might be something you can use. You pass a tree where monkeys lounge in the branches, one of them gnawing fruit with loud smacks. It tosses the pit toward you. It bounces off your shoulder. You don't even glare. You're too busy imagining how easily that fruit could be sliced open with the right edge. Historians still argue whether early hominins actively sought out specific raw materials or simply used whatever was at hand until better rocks presented themselves. The pattern of certain sites suggests travel to known quarries, but whether that travel was intentional or incidental remains debated. By the time you return, the sun has shifted, casting longer shadows from the acacias. You drop your collection near your favorite shady spot. Others in your group wander over, drawn by the sound of stone knocking stone. You kneel and start striking each tock, followed by the crisp clink of a flake falling free. Some flakes are perfect, thin, sharp, satisfying. Others break badly, crumbling into useless shards. You set those aside in a growing pile that's starting to look suspiciously like history's first garbage dump. As the light fades, you have a small array of promising tools. You try one on a fresh root, slicing through the tough skin in a fraction of the time it took yesterday. Another flake digs into the ground, loosening soil to reveal plump, edible tubers. And as the last of the day's warmth lingers on your skin, you sit back, a few choice pebbles still in your lap. Each one is a promise waiting to be broken into something sharper, something useful. The savanna around you hums with life, but your eyes are on stone. The next morning greets you with a pale gold haze. The sun hasn't yet burned away the cool breath of night, and the air smells faintly of wet clay and crushed leaves. You blink away the last fragments of sleep as you hear the gentle, rhythmic tock, tock, tock nearby. Someone else is already working stone. That sound tugs at you like the smell of food. It's an invitation to join in, or maybe a challenge not to be left behind. You wander toward the noise and find one of your kin crouched near the riverbank, their hands moving with a strangely deliberate rhythm. Strike, rotate, strike again. Chips of stone fan out in the dirt around them, and in their palm is something beautiful, in a way only you can feel. A flake so thin it looks like a frozen sliver of water, its edge shimmering in the morning light. The idea hits you, not just a thought, more like a spark that lands in dry grass. I could make one like that. You pick up a promising pebble, test its heft in your hand. It's a little heavier than you'd like, but your fingers curl around it comfortably. Across from you, your companion watches with mild curiosity, their head tilting ever so slightly. You place another stone on the ground as your target, raise your arm, and bring the hammerstone down in a quick, clean motion. The sound is sharper than you expect, almost like the snap of a bone. The flake that tumbles away isn't perfect, but when you lift it, you feel the same electric excitement you did the first time. Edges that promise action, the sense of having made something instead of just finding it. Mainstream fact? This leap, from stumbling across a sharp rock to deliberately producing one, is the real beginning of stone tool technology. Archaeologists call your work the Oldowan tradition, named after Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, where some of the earliest examples were found. These are the first objects in history whose shape is more the result of thought than accident. You're hooked. You try again, adjusting your grip, changing the angle. Sometimes the flake is better, sometimes worse. But the idea in your mind is getting clearer. The way the force travels through the stone, the point where it likes to break, the satisfying feel when the fracture runs just right. Quirky tidbit. Some anthropologists speculate that the repetitive sound of stone knapping could have been one of the earliest background noises of human life, a kind of prehistoric ASMR, if you will. Imagine falling asleep under the stars with the steady tock 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 of a neighbor making tools in the distance. You and your companion work in companionable silence, except for the rhythm of strikes and the occasional grunt of effort. The pile of flakes grows until it looks like a miniature snowdrift of stone. One flake slices open a fruit's thick skin so cleanly you almost laugh. If laughing were something you did on purpose. The juice is sweet, sticky on your fingers, and for a moment you forget the risk of predators, the endless hunt for food, the constant dance of survival. Historians still argue whether the spark of toolmaking came from a sudden burst of cognitive ability or from slow, gradual improvements over countless generations. Was there one brilliant hominin who saw the potential, or did it creep into being like the slow change of seasons? You don't know. You just know that when you strike stone against stone, something inside you feels alive. By afternoon, the sun is hot enough to drive you back to the shade of an acacia. You sit with your tools spread out in front of you, each one a little different. Some are perfect for slicing plants, others for scraping hides, others still for cracking small bones to reach the rich marrow inside. You didn't set out to make a collection, but here it is, your first step towards shaping the world instead of merely living in it. As the day closes, you hide your best flakes in a hollow under a rock, covering them with dry leaves. You're not ready to let them go. They're more than just tools now. They're proof that your hands can shape reality. The midday sun presses down on your shoulders like a warm, heavy blanket. Out on the open savanna, the light turns everything stark. Every blade of grass, every ripple in the dust, every glint of stone stands out in sharp relief. A faint breeze moves through, carrying the dry scent of cracked earth mixed with the metallic tang of distant rain. You kneel in the shade of a broad acacia, your knees sinking into the warm, powdery soil. Before you is a spread of stones gathered over the last few days. Some are rounded river pebbles, others jagged shards from where rock faces have split. All of them are candidates for the same ritual, the making of flakes. You choose one, dark, dense, volcanic. It sits comfortably in your palm, its weight solid, familiar. In your other hand, you hold a rounded hammerstone. Your fingers wrap around it, knuckles whitening just slightly as you brace yourself. The first strike is tentative, a mere tap, nothing. The second strike is harder. There's a sudden crack, a sound like dry wood snapping, and a sliver of stone jumps free. It lands in the dust with a high, almost musical ting. You pick it up. The flake is thin, light, its edge sharp enough to slice a finger if you're careless. And you are careless, just a little. A faint sting as your skin opens in a shallow cut. You suck at the spot, tasting the metallic tang of your own blood. It's not anger you feel, but fascination. Proof of just how keen that edge is. Mainstream fact: Oldowan flakes, like the one in your hand, were some of the earliest multi-purpose tools, perfect for cutting meat, scraping hides, or slicing through plant fibers. Even 2 million years later, experimental archaeologists can skin an animal with one as quickly as with a modern steel knife. You adjust your position and try again. This time, you aim for a particular angle. You notice that the strike works best if you hit near the edge, just off center, so the force travels through and peels away a flake instead of shattering the whole stone. Every mistake teaches you something. The way an awkward angle sends shock up your arm, or how hitting too hard turns a promising core into useless rubble. Quirky tidbit. There's evidence some flakes were so sharp they could cut through hide with such clean precision that even in modern labs, scientists have to wear heavy gloves when handling them. Imagine an object you made with your bare hands being dangerous enough to earn safety protocols millions of years later. Around you, a few others have gathered. They watch, heads tilted, eyes tracking your movements. One leans in, mimics your grip, tries a strike of their own. Their flake is clumsy, thick, but the spark of curiosity is there. The air fills with the sound of stone on stone. Irregular, but somehow communal. Historians still argue whether early tool-making sessions like this were deliberate teaching moments, or just the side effect of curiosity in close quarters. Was it instruction? Or was it more like one child watching another play and joining in? By late afternoon, you have a tidy little pile of flakes, each slightly different. Some are long and narrow, others triangular, others so small you'd almost dismiss them. Except You've learned that the tiny ones can be the most precise. You test one by slicing open a fibrous stem, revealing the pale, juicy core inside. Another works perfectly for scraping the outer bark of a stick, leaving a smooth surface that could be used for digging. When the sun begins to dip, you gather your best pieces into a shallow depression in the ground, cover them with dry grass, and mark the spot with a flat stone. You don't have words for ownership, but you have the instinct to protect what's useful. And as night comes, the memory of each crack and tink lingers in your ears. The rhythm of stonemaking isn't just a way to survive. It's becoming a part of who you are. The sun rises red and swollen on the horizon, casting a warm spill of light across the savanna. The morning air tastes cool and faintly dusty, with that strange sweetness that comes before the day starts cooking everything alive. You're crouched beside your cache of flakes, brushing away the dry grass you piled over them yesterday. They're all here, edges still sharp. But today, your mind is turning towards something bigger. Not just a flake for slicing, not just a chip for scraping. You want a tool that can do it all. You pull out one of the larger, unshaped cores, a chunk of stone as long as your hand. You've noticed something about these cores. They're sturdy, comfortable to hold, and heavy enough to swing with force. The problem is, they're awkward. The edges are uneven, so you can't use them for fine work without scraping your fingers raw. But what if you could shape the whole stone into one continuous, cutting edge? You set the core in your palm, tilt your head, and study it. There's a kind of geometry in your mind now, a mental picture of the shape you want, a long, leaf-like outline, edges tapering toward a point. You shift your grip on the hammer stone and strike with more intention than usual, aiming not just to produce flakes, but to reveal a form hidden inside. The first few blows are clumsy. A piece breaks off in the wrong direction, leaving a deep notch where you didn't want one. You pause, frown, not in the human sense, but in the way your brow ridge dips and your breathing slows. Then you try again, turning the core, trimming the edges. Slowly, almost accidentally, the stone begins to match the picture in your mind. Mainstream fact? While Homo habilis is most famous for Oldowan flakes, some evidence suggests they may have experimented with proto-hand axes, a tool type that would later become iconic under Homo erectus. These bifacial tools worked on both sides, were the Swiss army knives of prehistory, cutting, scraping, digging, and chopping in one. By midday, you're holding something new. It's still crude compared to the elegant symmetry that future generations will master, but it feels different in your hand. The pointed tip can pierce into tough hide or roots. The long edge can slice meat or strip bark. The thicker base sits comfortably in your palm without biting into your skin. Quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists have found hand axes so carefully made that they seem too perfect to have been purely functional. A few even suspect early humans might have crafted showpiece tools to impress others, making this possibly the world's first combination of utility and bragging rights. You test your new creation, first on a strip of hide left over from yesterday's scavenged carcass. The edge slides through it like it's soft fruit. Then, on a fallen branch, the tip chips away at the bark and sinks into the pale wood beneath. You dig into the soil, loosening a stubborn tuber, and the pointed end does the job without snapping. By the time you straighten, your shoulders ache pleasantly, and your mind hums with satisfaction. Historians still argue whether the development of more complex tools, like hand axes, was driven by necessity, harsh environments forcing innovation, or by social factors, where skilled makers gained higher status within their groups. You don't think in those terms, but you can feel the way others glance at your tool, their eyes catching on its shape, their hands reaching to touch it. That night, as the group settles into the shallow shelter of a rock overhang, you keep the hand axe close. The fireless dark is alive with the sound of hyenas yipping in the distance, and every so often you run your fingers along the stone's edge. It's not just a weapon or a knife. It's the first time you've made something that feels like it could be a part of you, an extension of your own will in the world. Somewhere, deep in the back of your mind, the dream forms. If you can make this, what else could you shape? The morning starts with the low, bone-vibrating roar of a lion somewhere beyond the tall grass. The sound rolls over you like distant thunder, impossible to ignore. You freeze mid-step, one hand still clutching the hand axe you made yesterday. Your eyes scan the savanna. Golden light, swaying seed heads. Nothing moving except the flick of a bird's wing. But the knowledge sits heavy in your chest. Whatever made that sound is a better hunter than you will ever be. You continue moving, but slower now, your feet making less noise on the dry soil. You're not out here to hunt in the way that big predators do, stalking, chasing, dragging down prey with raw power. Your kind isn't built for it. You're clever, sure, but your legs can't match a gazelle's sprint, and your teeth can't crush bone like a hyena's. Instead, you've learned to watch the world for opportunities. Up ahead, vultures wheel in lazy spirals over a patch of ground where the grass looks disturbed. You know that sight. You've seen it before. It means meat, but it also means danger. Whatever killed the animal might still be nearby. You creep closer, keeping downwind. The smell reaches you before the sight does. Coppery, sweet, edged with the sour tang of decay. You peer through the grass and see it. A zebra lying on its side, hide torn open near the belly. Flies hum in a thick cloud. A few meters away, a pair of jackals snap and dart at each other, pulling at the carcass. Mainstream fact. There's a long-running debate in paleoanthropology about whether Homo habilis hunted their own prey or scavenged from kills made by larger predators. The fossil record shows cut marks from stone tools on animal bones, often overlapping with bite marks from carnivores. The sequence of these marks suggests that in many cases, habilis got there after the main predator had eaten. You grip your hand axe tighter. You could rush in, scare off the jackals, grab what you can, and run. But timing is everything. You wait, heart thudding, until a distant roar makes the jackals glance up nervously. They bolt for the cover of brush. You take your chance. You dash in, kneel beside the zebra, and start slicing strips of meat from the flank. The sharp edge works beautifully, gliding through the muscle, Your fingers are slick almost immediately, and you're stuffing still warm pieces into a woven leaf pouch when a low growl prickles the hair on your neck. Quirky tidbit. Modern experiments have shown that even with a basic Oldowan flake, a skilled person can butcher an antelope in under half an hour. You, however, are racing to do in under half a minute what you can before the rightful owner, most likely a lion, returns. The growl gets louder. You don't look back. You just grab the last slice you can, scoop up your pouch, and run. The grass whips against your legs, and the weight of the meat pulls at your shoulder. Behind you, something crashes through the undergrowth. You don't slow until you're sure the sound has faded. Historians still argue whether occasional active hunting was part of your strategy. Some think small prey, birds, reptiles, maybe even young antelope, might have been within your abilities, especially with the aid of clubs or thrown stones. But the evidence for large game hunting at this stage is thin. By the time you reach the safety of camp, your breathing is ragged, but your group gathers quickly, drawn by the smell. You share the meat, each person taking turns slicing with your hand axe or their own flakes. It's tough and chewy, but the fat is rich and satisfying. You don't think about the zebra itself or the predator that killed it. For now, you're full, your belly warm with food, and your mind already turning over how you might do better next time. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to wonder whether waiting for a lion to do the hard work is the only way. The night is heavy and black, the kind of darkness that presses in so close you can almost feel it on your skin. Crickets chirp in scattered, irregular rhythms. Somewhere far off, a hyena's whooping laugh breaks the silence, then fades. You huddle close to your small group, beneath the shelter of an overhanging rock. The zebra meat from earlier still lingers in your mouth, faintly sweet and salty. But your mind is restless. You stare out into the dark, eyes straining for any glint of movement. You've seen fire before, on the distant horizon during the dry season, when lightning strikes the grasslands and the sky fills with smoke. It's beautiful in a way that makes your chest feel tight. Tall orange blades, swaying and snapping, shadows dancing wildly on the ground. But you've never held it, never shaped it like you've shaped stone. Tonight, though, your mind keeps circling back to the thought. Fire feels like another kind of tool, one that could drive away predators, warm you in the cold, maybe even change the taste of meat. You imagine it in your hands, contained somehow, tamed like a docile animal. Mainstream fact? Archaeological evidence suggests Homo habilis probably did not yet control fire, but they would have been aware of it, watching wildfires from a distance, perhaps even scavenging cooked remains from burned landscapes. The leap from awareness to mastery, however, would belong to later species, like Homo erectus. You lean back against the rock and close your eyes, trying to imagine how fire could be made. Two stones, perhaps? You've struck them together before. You know the bright white spark when a hard flake hits a core just right. But those sparks die instantly, disappearing into the air. Could they be caught somehow? You think of dry grass, of brittle leaves that crumble at a touch. Maybe if the spark landed there. Quirky tidbit. In modern experiments, striking certain stones together, like flint and iron pyrite, can produce sparks hot enough to ignite tinder. It's possible early hominins saw these sparks while knapping stone and had the first flicker of an idea. Even if they didn't yet act on it, you open your eyes again. One of your companions is awake, turning a flake in their hand, the sharp edge catching what little moonlight there is. You nod toward the stone, pick up one of your own, and tap them together. The sound is sharp, clean, and, just for a heartbeat, there's a tiny, silvery glimmer where they meet. Your companion freezes, eyes widening. The two of you try again, then again, the little flashes winking like distant stars. Historians still argue whether these moments of experimentation were conscious problem solving or just idle curiosity. Were you trying to make fire or simply fascinated by the glitter and snap of stone meeting stone? Either way, something is happening here that didn't happen for countless generations before you. The leap from "this is" to "what if?" Eventually, the night grows colder, and the sparks remain only sparks. But the idea stays with you, tucked away like a flake in a hidden cache. You know the rhythm of stone napping now, the shapes hidden inside rock, the meat that comes from scavenging at the right time. But this invisible power that dances and disappears feels like the beginning of something bigger than all of that. You close your eyes again, the blackness behind your eyelids pulsing with imagined orange light. In your dreams, the fire is yours, and the night around you is warm and safe. The sun is barely over the horizon when you hear the first clack of stone on stone. It's a sound you've known for seasons now. Sharp, staccato, each strike sending a ripple of meaning through the air. You rise from where you've been crouched near the riverbank, knees aching a little from the damp, and make your way toward the sound. There's the old one, sitting cross-legged in a patch of dust, a half-finished hand axe in their lap. Around them, 3 younger faces watch, heads tilting in unconscious imitation of the master's movements. Their eyes are locked not on the elder's face, but on the hands, those patient, deliberate hands that have been coaxing edges from stone for decades. You settle into the group's loose circle. You've seen this before, but something about it still catches at your attention. The old one doesn't speak much, not in words you'd call teaching. They grunt now and then, shift their weight, hold up a flake between thumb and forefinger so the light runs along its sharpness. One of the younger ones leans in, fingers twitching as if they can feel the cut without touching it. Here's the mainstream fact. By the time of Homo erectus, and even earlier, the passing of tool-making skills was no accident. While we don't have written records, the archaeological layers tell the story. Stone tools in the same style, passed across generations and even geographies, show that these techniques weren't stumbled on anew every time. They were taught in whatever wordless, gesture-rich way our ancestors knew. You remember your own first attempt. You'd found a good core, dense, fine-grained, and tried to copy what you'd seen. The flake flew off crooked. You tried again and again. Your hands ached and your mind seethed with frustration. Then, without warning, the old one had knelt beside you, taken your hand and adjusted the angle of your grip. One more strike, and the flake came off clean and long. It had felt like magic. Now you watch as the younger ones mimic the movements. Some strikes are wild, some timid, but every so often, a flake detaches with that shh whisper that means success. The elder nods, not smiling exactly, but their eyes soften. Quirky tidbit. Even modern chimpanzees can watch and learn some tool behaviors. But there's a limit. What separates you and your kind is this refinement, not just imitating, but deliberately correcting, guiding, and perfecting. It's not simply monkey see, monkey do. It's monkey see, monkey do better next time. There's a rhythm to it now. Strike, turn, strike, lift the flake, examine it, pass it to the student. Sometimes, the elder taps a student's hand lightly to reposition it. Sometimes, they demonstrate a motion slowly, exaggerating the arc of the swing. You realize this is more than tool making. It's the birth of tradition. Scholarly debate still lingers over whether early humans taught intentionally or whether it was more learning by osmosis, just being near the skilled ones until the shapes and movements settled into memory. But here, in the dust and sun, you can feel it leaning toward intentional. A choice to share. When the work is done, the younger ones carry their tools away, like treasures, running fingers along each edge. You stay behind, watching the elder gather the flakes into a neat pile. You think of how the same hand axe shapes appear in places you've never seen, carried across valleys and rivers by people you'll never meet. You understand now. The Stone Age isn't the only thing being shaped. The hands that strike and guide, the eyes that watch and copy, these are the invisible threads binding the group, binding generations. Tools may chip and break, but the skill, that can outlast the rock itself. You pick up your own core and turn it over. Tomorrow, maybe, you'll sit in the dust with the younger ones. And when they miss the mark, you'll take their hand, tilt it just so, and pass on the rhythm. The sun is higher now, and the air carries the quiet satisfaction of work done well. In the distance, the clack of stone has already started again. The air smells faintly of rot and river mud. It's not unpleasant, not exactly. Just one of those scents that means you found something worth investigating. You crouch low, squinting at the half-buried curve of pale in the silt. Bone, big bone. You scrape gently with a stick, working the mud away until a long shaft emerges, heavy and smooth from seasons of water. You've seen bones before. You've even cracked a few open for marrow, the rich, fatty prize hidden inside. But this one is different. Along its length are shallow grooves, not from claws or teeth, but from stone. Long, parallel, purposeful. You turn it in your hands, tracing the ridges with your fingertips. There's a memory here, not your own, but belonging to the group. Marks like these mean more than hunger. They mean action, intention. You remember seeing the elder once, crouched over a carcass, not just hacking at flesh, but working carefully at the joint, separating tendon from bone with the precision of a river bird plucking fish. Mainstream fact? Archaeologists have found bones from nearly 2 million years ago, with cut marks still visible, evidence of stone tools slicing meat from carcasses long before writing, long before fire in every hearth. These aren't accidents. They're signatures of behavior that echo across millennia. You glance around. A pair of children are watching from the edge of the riverbank, one clutching a half-broken flake. You hold up the bone, showing them the lines. They creep closer, eyes darting between the grooves and your face. You place the bone on the ground, take their flake, and drag its edge across the surface. A thin curl of bone dust lifts into the air. The children's mouths drop open. Here's the quirky tidbit. Cut marks on bones aren't just a prehistoric grocery list. Sometimes, ancient humans seem to have scraped bones clean, even when no meat was left, possibly for tendons, marrow, or even to use the bone itself as raw material for tools. It's like turning the leftovers into the next meal. You can almost hear the debate that modern scholars still have about scenes like this. Were these marks the result of active hunting, your kind bringing down large animals through cooperation and skill? Or were you scavenging kills from lions, hyenas, and saber-tooths? The truth might be tangled somewhere in between, a mix of daring hunts and opportunistic feasts. After all, meat is meat, whether you take it from the chase or from a predator's abandoned kill. By the time the children try their own strikes on the bone, the sun has shifted high enough to flash against the flakes in their hands. Their movements are clumsy, but now they know the grooves they make will last for years, maybe decades, until another set of curious hands finds them and wonders who made them and why. You set the bone down on a rock, cracking it once, hard. A sharp report echoes over the riverbank. A thick seam of pale marrow glistens in the light. The children squeal in delight as you hand them each a piece. It's warm, greasy, and alive with the taste of survival. When the marrow is gone, the bone lies there, lighter now, stripped of its inner treasure. But the grooves remain, stubborn and silent, just like the ones you first found. In time, the river will bury it in silt again. Maybe one day, long after your own hands are dust, someone will find it and trace their own fingers over the marks. And they'll know, not your name, not your face, but that you were there, and that you had a sharp edge and a reason to use it. The morning light filters through the canopy, painting your hands gold. You turn them over slowly, as if seeing them for the first time. They're not paws, not claws, something stranger, more versatile. 5 fingers on each with its own little mind. The thumb, short, thick, and set apart, presses against the others like a tool all by itself. It's easy to forget how unusual these things are. No other creature here can do quite what you can. The monkeys above can grab branches, sure, but they cling. You shape. You pinch tiny seeds between forefinger and thumb. You wrap your whole palm around a stone and feel the edges bite back. The camp is waking. A child is turning a nut over in her hands, smacking it against a rock. The nut rolls away, unbroken. You squat beside her, take it in your own fingers, and set it into the natural groove of a hammerstone. One sharp strike with another stone, crack, and the shell splits neatly. You pick out the kernel and place it in her palm. She grins, but her eyes are on your hands. Mainstream fact: the human hand, especially with its opposable thumb, evolved for both precision and power grips. This made it possible not just to hold tools, but to make them, to repeat shapes, to refine techniques. From peeling fruit to shaping a spear tip, these were the instruments that built our past. Your own hands tell a story. The skin across your palms is ridged with calluses. Your nails are short and chipped. The fine muscles in your fingers work together with a grace you never consciously learned. When you grip a flake to scrape hide, the motion is as natural as breathing. You pause to pick up a stick, stripping the bark with your thumbnail. A few twists of the wrist, a rotation in the palm, and it's already smoother. Another strip, another adjustment. These aren't random movements. They're practiced, repeated across countless tasks. This is knowledge in the fingers. Here's your quirky tidbit. Anthropologists have found that some of our early relatives, Homo erectus, for instance, had hands capable of gripping just like ours, long before they invented the most advanced tools of their time. That means, for a while, we had the hardware before the full software. The hands came first. The ingenuity followed. There's a debate among scholars about why our hands evolved this way in the first place. Was it for making tools? Or did it start with climbing and feeding behaviors, and only later get repurposed for stone napping? Some even argue throwing, yes, throwing, shaped the human hand, giving us the power to hurl stones and spears with deadly aim. In the distance, a young hunter practices with a rock, tossing it toward a stump. His fingers release at just the right moment, sending the stone spinning. You watch the flight, the arc, the thud as it hits. The whole movement started here, in the flex of fingers, in the rotation of a wrist. You glance back at your own hands. They're not beautiful, not smooth, but in them is the grip that shapes a flake, the twist that braids sinew, the press that breaks a nut, the throw that might save your life. The day stretches ahead, full of tasks, full of chances to use these strange, clever tools at the ends of your arms. You flex them once, feeling the tendons shift like hidden ropes. These aren't just hands, they're your legacy. You close your eyes, and the world doesn't disappear. It rearranges itself. The trees, the river, the rocky ridge, they're all still there, hovering behind your eyelids like shapes in a remembered dream. The campfire crackles nearby, but in your mind, you're far away, walking along a game trail you know as well as the lines in your palm. The path curves left, past the fallen tree, with mushrooms growing from its side. The smell of damp earth comes next, just before the little stream, where you once saw the prints of a big cat. A few steps further, and the clearing opens, where the tall grass hides both deer and danger. You're not looking at it now, but you know it's there. Mainstream fact: early humans and their relatives relied on powerful spatial memory to survive. They could store vast mental maps of landscapes, remembering waterholes, migration routes, seasonal food sources, and dangerous spots, without writing anything down. This wasn't just about navigation. It was about planning, predicting, and connecting points in space and time. This morning, a small group heads out for a hunt, and you're one of them. There's no carved map, no trail markers, just the collective memory of where the herd was last seen. Someone points to the sun's position. Someone else mentions where the grass was freshly trampled yesterday. Your mind knits these clues together, placing them on that invisible landscape only you can see. Here's your quirky tidbit. Studies show that modern humans in remote foraging cultures can recall hundreds of specific landmarks and their relative positions, all without paper or GPS. It's a kind of mental superpower most city dwellers have let rust. You, on the other hand, keep it sharp. Your stomach depends on it. There's debate among anthropologists about what exactly drove the evolution of this skill. Was it purely for finding food and water? Or was it also for social reasons? Remembering where other groups lived, where allies or rivals had been seen. Some even suggest it shaped our storytelling because mapping places in the mind and mapping events in time use similar parts of the brain. The trail narrows, and you recognize a cluster of twisted trees ahead. Without speaking, you angle left. There's a shortcut through the scrub, one you discovered seasons ago while tracking a wounded antelope. The others follow later. As the sun leans toward evening, you find fresh hoofprints heading toward a watering hole tucked between two hills. You've never seen these particular tracks before, but your mental map is already updating itself. New paths branching off old ones, new landmarks linking to familiar routes. By the time you return to camp, you could draw it all in the dirt. The fork where the berry bushes grow, the rock shaped like a crouching lion, the hollow tree where bees nest. But you don't need to. It's already printed deep in your mind, ready for the next journey. The world is vast, but in your head, it's folded small enough to carry in your pocket, if only you had one. You're crouched in the cool shadow of a rock overhang, tracing your finger along a line in the stone. It's not a natural crack, at least, not entirely. Someone, maybe even someone you knew, has worked it into a deliberate groove. It doesn't point anywhere. It doesn't cut deep enough to split the rock. But it means something. You can't quite put it into words. Not that you have many words to begin with, but you feel it, like an echo. Whoever made it left more than a mark. They left a thought. This is how it begins. Not in grand caves, full of painted bison and galloping horses. That comes later. But in tiny gestures, small scratches in stone, patterns pressed into clay, bones left arranged in ways the wind couldn't have done. Mainstream fact. Archaeologists have found evidence of symbolic behavior, things made or altered for meaning, not just utility, long before the famous cave art of the Upper Paleolithic. Incised ochre pieces from Blombos Cave in South Africa, around 75,000 years old, carry deliberate crosshatch designs. These aren't tools, they're messages, or maybe markers of identity, passed in silence across generations. You lean closer to the wall. A patch of ochre stains the rock, not from cooking or fire, but from someone grinding the mineral into powder and smearing it on purpose. Maybe they decorated their skin. Maybe they marked objects to claim them. Or maybe they just thought it looked beautiful. That's the thing about these earliest signs of culture. They don't come with captions. Here's your quirky detail. Some early ochre markings were so subtle that researchers only noticed them under microscopes centuries later. Which means, for tens of thousands of years, those little gestures lay quietly in the earth, carrying a secret nobody was around to hear. And there's debate. Did these marks really mean anything? Or are we just reading into them because we want to see ourselves in the past? Some scientists argue they were nothing more than idle doodles or byproducts of sharpening tools. Others see them as the first flickers of abstract thought, proof that humans had begun to live in two worlds at once, the physical and the symbolic. As the evening cools, you walk back toward camp, carrying a river pebble smoothed in your palm. It's not sharp enough to cut, not heavy enough to crush, but you keep it anyway. Something about its swirl of colors pleases you. You don't know the word for art, but you know the feeling. Later, by firelight, you catch sight of another hunter wearing a necklace of shells, their edges worn from rubbing together. The shells come from the coast, many days' walk away. They serve no purpose in hunting or gathering, yet they hang proudly on display. You can't help but glance at your pebble and smile. The cracks in the stone, the ochre on the skin, the shells around the neck. They're more than random acts. They're little stitches binding people together, threads of meaning slipping quietly between the necessities of survival. And in those stitches, culture begins, small, fragile, but enduring. The first whispers of a shared world, hidden in plain sight. The river has been stingy this season. Fish slip past your spears. Game trails feel empty, and the berry patches are nothing but shriveled stalks. But you're not here for food. You've walked upriver for something else entirely. The sun glints off a patch of gravel, and you drop to your knees. There, half buried in sand, is the kind of stone you've been looking for. Not the sharpest, not the heaviest, but the right one. You pick it up, turning it in your hand. The surface is flecked with specks that catch the light, almost like the night sky when the fires burned low. You don't think about how this helps you hunt or build. You just want it. It's strange, this pull toward things that don't feed your stomach or keep you warm. Yet here you are, trudging back to camp with a rock that serves no practical purpose, unless you count the quiet way it makes your chest feel lighter. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have found caches of stones far from their sources, carried by early humans across miles of rough terrain. Some were quartz crystals, some were colorful minerals, others were oddly shaped pebbles with no clear function. These non-utilitarian objects suggest that our ancestors valued beauty, rarity, or symbolic meaning enough to transport them, sometimes more carefully than food. Later, sitting by the fire, you place your stone next to others you found. There's the one shaped like a perfect egg, the one striped with a single white vein, the one that fits your palm so well it almost feels like it was made for it. Here's your quirky detail. In some prehistoric sites, archaeologists have found geodes, still sealed, never cracked open, which means someone carried them for the joy of the unknown, treasuring the mystery as much as any answer. But there's debate here too. Were these special stones, truly symbolic or just byproducts of curiosity. Some scientists argue they might have been kept as lucky charms or talismans. Others think they were simply nice to look at. The line between survival tool and treasured object isn't always sharp, especially when survival itself might depend on morale, group identity, or shared rituals. That night, a child in camp picks up your flecked stone and gasps when it catches the firelight. They hold it up for everyone to see, and soon it's passed from hand to hand. Laughter and chatter ripple through the group. No one eats better tonight because of it. No one sleeps warmer. And yet the mood has shifted. Lighter, more connected. Maybe that's the point. In a world where every day is a negotiation with hunger, thirst, and weather, sometimes you need something that speaks to another part of you. Something beyond survival. Something that says, we are more than what we eat. We are more than the tools we hold. And so the stones pile up, each one a quiet act of defiance against a world that demands all your attention just to stay alive. You've learned a lot about stones, spears, and fire by now, but today is about something harder to shape. People. Your camp has grown lately. Where there were once 6 of you, there are now 15. More voices around the fire, more hands to help gather wood, more eyes to watch for predators, and more opinions about everything. The morning begins with an argument over where to move camp. The older hunter wants to stay near the river. Fish are running. The young spearmaker insists on heading toward the hills. He's seen deer tracks there. Someone else mutters about the nearby family that took more than their share of cooked roots last night. You've noticed this before. When the group was smaller, decisions came quickly. Now, it's a tangle of voices, gestures, and sideways glances. Still, you see a rhythm forming. The loudest don't always win. Sometimes, the quiet observer, old hands working a flint edge, speaks, and the whole group shifts. Mainstream fact. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherers, like the Hadza of Tanzania, have observed that leadership in small foraging groups isn't rigid. Decisions often emerge from consensus, and different people lead in different contexts. One person during a hunt, another when navigating terrain, another when resolving disputes. This flexible leadership style may have deep roots in our prehistory. You've also noticed something else. Those useless stones you collected last moon have become part of these talks. Someone rolls one between their palms while thinking. Another passes a shiny pebble to someone they disagree with, almost like a peace offering. Quirky detail. In some ethnographic studies, objects like talking sticks or simply passing a specific item around help structure who speaks next in group discussions. It's possible your ancestors had an early, informal version of this, where an object gave the holder a kind of right to speak. Of course, not everything is harmonious. You've seen food vanish mysteriously in the night. You've seen side eyes become full-on glares. You've seen someone quietly walk away in the morning, leaving behind only a pile of embers where their fire was. And here's where the scholarly debate kicks in. Some researchers believe that large group living among early humans, required strict rules, punishments, and even ostracism to prevent freeloading. Others argue that human social evolution leaned more on cooperation, mutual reliance, and subtle social pressure. Gossip, for example, being one of the earliest tools for maintaining order. By nightfall, you're still camped by the river. The deer will wait. The fish will not. The argument from the morning is gone, replaced by the glow of the fire and the shared rhythm of chewing roasted roots. You realize that survival isn't just about finding food and water. It's also about keeping the group from splintering apart. A lone human on the plains is a snack. A group is a force. And somewhere between the fish bones, the quiet negotiations, and the glint of that flecked stone in someone's hand, you see it, the slow, patient weaving of a social net strong enough to hold everyone together. The sun is warm on your shoulders today, but the air smells faintly of something damp and earthy. Yesterday's rain still lingering in the soil. You've set out from camp, not for hunting, not for gathering roots, but for something in between. Wandering with your eyes open, your hands curious. Because lately, you've noticed, you're not just bringing food or fuel back to camp anymore. You're also bringing things. Things that do not roast well over a fire, do not scrape, hide, do not cut meat. It started with a bright red pebble, smooth as a river bend, small enough to tuck between your teeth. Though that experiment didn't last long, because someone laughed and you nearly swallowed it. You still don't know why you picked it up. But the moment you showed it to the others, it made them stop talking, just for a heartbeat. That's rare. Today, your find is stranger still, a twisted piece of antler. The tips are worn smooth, but the middle spirals in a way you've never seen before, like the path smoke takes when it escapes a fire. You turn it in your hand as you walk. It fits your palm just right. It doesn't do anything, and yet, it does something to you. When you reach camp, a few people glance at it. One of the children points and makes a spiraling gesture in the air. Someone else reaches to touch it, but you pull it back without thinking. Not ready to share. Not yet. Mainstream fact. Archaeologists have found that even early hominins, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and early modern humans, collected objects that seem to have no practical purpose. These include unusually shaped stones, pieces of crystal, and shells carried far inland. In some cases, such finds were kept for years, suggesting an early aesthetic sense or symbolic thinking, possibly the roots of art. But this isn't just about beauty. You've noticed the power in these useless things. One woman in camp wears a small shell on a strip of sinew around her neck. She claims it keeps storms away. The shell came from a place far from here, past the hills where you've never walked. Another man keeps a piece of black glassy stone in his pouch. It's too small for a tool, too sharp to carry carelessly, yet he fingers it during tense moments. You begin to suspect these finds carry stories, and stories, in their way, are just as vital as peers. They are memory you can touch. Quirky detail. In 2009, researchers discovered a cache of pink quartzite pebbles in a South African cave dated to about 100,000 years ago. They had no cutting marks, no signs of use, yet they'd been carried into the cave from a riverbed miles away. One theory is that the pebbles were kept simply because they were pretty or special to someone. If so, it means people have been collecting cool rocks for 100 millennia, possibly the earliest human hobby. Of course, not everyone agrees. These are signs of early art or symbolism. Scholarly debate. Some anthropologists argue these finds could just be the result of absent-minded collecting, like how chimpanzees sometimes keep sticks or feathers for days, without a deeper meaning. Others believe the very act of noticing and keeping something unnecessary marks a shift in cognition, the beginning of symbolic thought, ritual, and culture. The truth is likely tangled between the two. That evening, after the sun slides down and the air turns cool, you sit by the fire. The antler spiral rests beside you. A child leans close to study it. You don't stop them. Their small fingers trace its curve, and they giggle. You realize then that maybe the point of these quirky finds isn't whether they're useful for survival. Maybe it's that they make life feel richer. They spark curiosity, invite touch, stir conversation. They carry a kind of quiet magic that can't be eaten, worn, or burned, only shared. Tomorrow, you'll go out again. You'll look for meat, roots, and wood. Yes, but you'll also keep your eyes open for the next odd thing that catches your heart before your head. Because in a world where every day is about survival, a strange, beautiful thing in your hand can feel like a luxury beyond measure. The morning mist hugs the ground, clinging to your ankles as you step beyond the familiar clearing. In your hand, a well-worn hand axe, its edge sharpened just 2 days ago, the flake scars still fresh. This is not just a lump of stone anymore. It's a promise, a silent assurance that whatever lies ahead, be it root, bone, or hide, you will be ready. But today, the hand axe isn't just about what you do. It's about where you go. You've noticed something over the past seasons. Each kind of land has its own kind of tools. The riverbank's smooth pebbles are good for pounding tubers. The ridge's sharp flint makes cutting easy. The wide plain beyond the trees, dangerous open, full of wind, offers no stone at all. But there are sticks there, long and straight, perfect for spear shafts. You begin to connect these dots. The tools you make depend on the territory you roam. And the territory you roam changes depending on the tools you can carry. Mainstream fact: by the time of Homo erectus and early Homo sapiens, tool use was deeply tied to geography. Groups often traveled to specific areas for particular raw materials, sometimes covering dozens of kilometers. Archaeological sites show distinct imported stone types, evidence that early humans understood not only tool making, but also where the best resources could be found. That understanding changes how you move through the world. Now, when someone says, "Let's follow the herd," you think, what stone lies beyond their path? When you rest, you notice the land's shapes and features, not just for hunting, but for crafting. It's as if the hand axe in your hand has reshaped your mind as much as the flint itself. You're no longer just moving through space. You're mapping it. Quirky detail. In parts of Kenya, archaeologists have found that Homo erectus carried certain stone tools more than 12 kilometers from where they were made. One theory suggests these weren't just random migrations. These early travelers may have had mental maps of resource-rich spots, visiting them the way modern people might visit a favorite market. Scholarly debate. Were these early journeys for tools, deliberate expeditions, or just part of larger seasonal movements, following animals and plants? Some researchers believe tool resource planning marks a leap in cognition toward abstract thinking, because you have to imagine a place you're not currently in and plan a trip to get there. Others argue it could have been an unconscious habit, not yet true planning in the modern sense. You feel the difference on days like this, when the land opens ahead of you. The mist lifts, revealing a ridge in the distance, a line you've never crossed. Someone mutters about finding flint there, sharper than any in your current camp. Your grip on the hand axe tightens. The journey will be long. You'll need food, water, and a sharp eye for predators. But the thought of returning with stones so fine it sings against bone. This drives you forward. Tools have taught you to notice land. Land has taught you to shape tools. And together, they've taught you something bigger. You're not fixed in one place. Your hands and your feet now speak the same language. Tomorrow, you will carry both your hunger and your hand axe into new ground. And you will come back, not just with meat or stone, but with a little more of the world etched into your mind. The wind hits differently today, sharp, dry, with a taste of dust. It rasps at your throat as you crouch beside the embers, nudging the coals into life. The air feels wrong. Yesterday, the river's edge was still damp beneath your toes. Today, cracks split the mud like parched lips. The birds are quieter. Even the distant calls of grazing animals sound strained. You've lived long enough to know this is not just a bad day. It's a shift. The land is changing, and it doesn't care how well you've learned to hunt or chip stone. For most of your life, tools and territory have been steady partners. But now, the partnership is under stress. Your favorite flint ridge still lies in the distance, but the plants you rely on for food are withering. Animals move further and further to find water. And following them means leaving behind familiar tool-making sites. You remember a story the elders told. Once, long ago, the rain stopped for so long, the people had to eat roots so bitter they made their tongues numb. They shaped new digging sticks to reach tubers buried deep, traded sharp stones for skins that held precious water, and followed rivers to their hidden springs. Survival didn't just depend on strength or speed. It depended on bending your tools to fit the land's new rules. Mainstream fact: climate fluctuations during the Pleistocene, cold snaps, droughts, and shifting rainfall forced early humans to adapt rapidly. Archaeologists have found toolkits changing in response to these environmental pressures. Specialized scrapers for hides in colder periods, or digging tools in times of drought. Movement patterns often shifted dramatically to track seasonal resources. This is when your group's skills are tested. Can you carry enough stone to shape new tools far from the quarry? Can you weave containers from reeds before they dry to brittle dust? Can you remember the way to that hidden canyon spring you only visited once as a child? You notice how the environment isn't just a backdrop. It's an opponent and an ally, sometimes in the same day. A sudden storm might scatter game animals, but also fill the cracked clay with drinkable water. Quirky detail. In South Africa's Pinnacle Point caves, early humans may have turned to shellfish and coastal plants during periods of drought, using simple stone tools to crack shells and dig for bulbs. This coastal living wasn't just a diet change. It might have been a lifeline when inland food sources failed. Scholarly debate. Were environmental challenges the driver of human innovation, or merely a trigger that exposed skills already in place? Some scholars argue that droughts and ice ages pushed humans into creative overdrive, forcing them to invent and explore. Others suggest that much of this adaptability existed before, with environmental stress simply revealing what was already possible. The sun is high now, baking the earth until it smells like hot dust and old stone. You sling your carrying net over your shoulder, weighing your choices. North, toward the Flint Ridge, or west, toward the shrinking river. The tools you choose today will be shaped by that choice, and the land's answer to it. Every change in the wind is a reminder. The world does not wait for you to catch up. If you want to survive, your hands, your mind, and your stones must move as quickly as the shifting earth beneath your feet. The world doesn't change all at once. Sometimes it shifts in tiny, almost invisible ways, like the way you now pause before throwing away a broken flake of stone. A year ago, you'd have tossed it aside. Today, you keep it, turning it over in your hands, wondering if that jagged edge might still serve a purpose. That's the thing about living here now. Every problem you've solved, every tool you've shaped, sends out ripples, not just in your own mind, but in the minds of everyone around you. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about foresight. You've begun imagining tools you haven't made yet. You see a deer track and not only think of the hunt, but of where the deer might go next, what the land will look like when the rains return, how to store food for a time when it's scarce. You notice the same in your group. Someone suggests using a stone not for cutting, but for grinding seeds. Another remembers a place where sharper stones can be found, days away. Slowly, thinking is becoming more than reaction. It's becoming strategy. Mainstream fact. Archaeologists see evidence of this shift in the increasing complexity of stone tool assemblages during the lower and middle Paleolithic. Tools become more standardized in shape, suggesting mental templates, a kind of mental blueprint for making an object the same way again and again. This ability to imagine and reproduce a design marks a significant leap in cognitive capacity. One evening, you sit near the fire, napping a flint core, while the smoke curls into the night sky. A child leans over your shoulder, not just watching, but asking why you shape it this way. You pause, realizing that the question isn't about copying, it's about understanding. That's new. It's in these moments that knowledge turns into tradition. ideas stop being one-time flashes and start being part of your group's shared mind. Quirky detail. In some archaeological sites, early humans left behind unfinished tools, almost as if they were practice pieces. It's possible these were teaching moments, where less experienced knappers were learning by doing, and their work was kept or discarded based on its usefulness. In other words, we may have the Paleolithic equivalent of homework scattered across the ancient landscape. Scholarly debate. Did these cognitive ripples happen gradually over tens of thousands of years? Or were there bursts of innovation triggered by rare events, like environmental crises or intergroup contact? Some scholars suggest cognition evolved steadily alongside brain size, while others argue for punctuated leaps in mental capacity when conditions demanded it. As you lie down to sleep, the fire's glow flickering against the rock wall. You think about the tools beside you. Tomorrow, you'll carry them further than you ever have before. Not because you must, but because you can imagine a use for them somewhere else. Sometime later, the ripples are spreading. What began as a sharp edge in your hand is now a shape in your mind. And that might be the sharpest tool of all. You've seen it before? The slow, careful way an elder hands a tool to someone younger. It's not just passing an object, it's passing everything that went into it. The memory of the stone's source, the technique to shape it, the rhythm of the strikes, the unspoken rules of when and how to use it. One day, it's your turn. The child stands in front of you, a little awkward, eyes darting between your face and the flake in your hand. They've been watching you for weeks, their own small pile of mistakes lying in the dust. You hold up your best scraper, run a finger along its edge, and then, without ceremony, place it in their palm. You don't say much, but you stay close as they try it out. The edge catches on a hide. The child's brow furrows, and you offer a single tap of the knuckle to adjust their grip. This is how your people learn, not in speeches, but in moments. Mainstream fact: anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies note that skill transmission often happens informally through apprenticeship-style learning. Young members watch, imitate, and gradually improve under the guidance of elders. Evidence from sites like Oldowan in Kenya shows that early humans likely had long periods of skill transfer, as indicated by clusters of tools of varying craftsmanship in one place. It's not just children you teach. Sometimes visitors from another group arrive, and after sharing food and fire, you share techniques. They show you a way to sharpen faster. You show them a way to haft the stone onto wood. Days later, they're gone, but your method will travel with them, far beyond the places you'll ever see. And so, the baton doesn't just pass forward in time. It spreads sideways too, crossing rivers, plains, and generations you'll never meet. Quirky detail. In some cases, archaeological layers show sudden appearances of advanced tool types in areas where they weren't present before, suggesting that the baton may have traveled hundreds of kilometers, likely carried by social networks or marriage exchanges between groups. Imagine swapping not just gifts, but entire technologies during what might have been the Paleolithic version of a family reunion. Scholarly debate. Was tool knowledge passed mostly by direct teaching? Or could it spread just by observation? Someone seeing a stranger use a clever design once, and then figuring it out themselves. Some researchers argue for high-fidelity transmission, where techniques must be shown in detail to survive across generations, while others think a single glimpse could spark independent reinvention. As the fire fades and the child works in the dim glow, you notice they've made a chip along the edge, exactly where you showed them earlier. It's not perfect, but it's theirs. Somewhere deep inside, you realize you'll be gone one day, but this skill, this way of shaping the world, will not. You've passed more than a baton. You've passed a spark. The sun is low, painting the edges of the hills in copper and gold. You sit on a flat rock, a half-shaped flake in your lap, turning it over in your hands. Its edges catch the light the same way tools did when you were a child, watching your elders work. Back then, you thought the stone's magic came from its shine. Now, you know the magic is in the memory. Every strike you make is an echo of thousands before you. Around you, the camp hums with small sounds. Laughter near the fire, the rhythm of hide scraping, the low murmur of a story told for the 100th time. In the dirt, there are chips and flakes from today's work, mixing with the fragments of yesterday's. No one will think to preserve them. They'll lie here until wind and rain bury them. But one day, maybe far in the future, someone will find them and wonder what you were making, who you were. That's the strange thing. You don't make tools thinking about history. You make them because tomorrow you'll need them. But somehow, in shaping stone, you've left a mark on time itself. Mainstream fact. Archaeological finds often preserve stone tools far better than almost anything else from early human life. Sites dating back hundreds of thousands of years, like Boxgrove in England or Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, still hold the flint and quartz artifacts of ancient hands. These tools are not just functional remains. They are the fingerprints of human thought and culture, frozen in time. One evening, an elder hands you a piece of flint they've carried for years. It's worn and dull now, more keepsake than tool. This one, they murmur, was my teacher's. You feel the weight, not just in stone, but in meaning. A chain of hands stretching back beyond memory. You'll keep it safe, not because it's sharp, but because it was theirs. You realize that tools aren't just technology. They're stories you can hold, quirky detail. In some prehistoric sites, archaeologists find caches of unused tools buried together. Were these offerings emergency reserves, or the ancient equivalent of someone forgetting their toolbox? No one knows for sure, but the idea that someone might have hidden their best work for a future they never saw feels oddly poetic. Scholarly debate. Was the making of finely crafted tools, beyond what was strictly necessary, an early form of symbolic behavior, a way to show skill, status, or identity? Some scholars argue that over-designed tools hint at aesthetics and pride, not just survival. Others think these refinements were purely practical. The truth may be that both impulses, function, and expression were already intertwined in the human mind. As the last light fades, you place your new tool beside the elder's old one. Two shapes of flint, separated by decades, but linked by purpose. You know they'll both outlast you, perhaps by millennia. Long after the fire dies, the wind shifts, and the voices here are gone. The stones will remain, silent witnesses to lives lived, lessons learned, and a legacy chipped into the earth. If you want, I can now compile all 20 sections into a seamless full script, so you have the complete Paleolithic journey in one flow, without breaks. That way, it reads like one long, immersive story. The night is quiet now. The fire has burned down to soft embers, glowing faintly like the eyes of some gentle creature watching over the camp. The air carries the faint scent of wood smoke, mingled with the cool dampness of earth and stone. Somewhere beyond the circle of light, an owl shifts on its branch, offering a low, distant call. You stretch your hands toward the fading warmth, feeling the fine grit of stone dust still caught in your skin. Each tiny grain is a reminder of the work you've done, of the hands before yours, and of the countless lives that chipped and shaped their way through the ages. It's almost impossible to imagine the full stretch of time, how many generations it took to carry these skills forward, to pass along not just tools, but the understanding of how to make them. Above you, the stars wheel in patterns older than any tool. Your ancestors saw the same constellations, though they might have told different stories about them. You imagine them looking up after a day's work, feeling the same quiet satisfaction that you feel now. The knowledge that, for this night at least, you have done enough. The ground beneath you is cool, steady, unchanging, yet it remembers every flake, every worn handle, every ash-stained hearth leaves its trace. And in this moment, lying between the comfort of fire and the mystery of darkness, you are both a part of that ancient story and a fleeting whisper within it. The embers fade. Your eyes grow heavy. The night wraps itself around you like a soft hide blanket. And somewhere, deep in the stone, the memory of your touch will remain. Sweet dreams.